Iran is showing more signs of becoming a growing threat to Israel and even to the U.S. International inspectors have reported that Iran has been increasing its enrichment of uranium, which they say could be used to produce a nuclear weapon. And Iran's defense minister today warns that an attack on Iran could lead to the collapse of Israel. Joining me now from Washington is Tom Ridge, former Secretary of Homeland Security, who spoke with the conference today in the nation's capital about threats from Iran. We're very glad you're here. Welcome.
Thanks for joining you, Alex. Thank you.
Well, is military action by Israel unavoidable at this point?
Well, it certainly seems that keeping that very visible and potential option on the table, not only from Israel's perspective, but an embrace by the Western world, is something that Iran should take very, very seriously. Whether it's unavoidable or not depends on a lot of different things. It's negotiations, the impact of sanctions. But Iran needs to know unequivocally, not just Israel's interest in there being a non-nuclear nation, but the broader Western world, and frankly, much of the Arab world doesn't want them armed with nuclear weapons either.
So if Israel does attack Iranian nuclear sites, do you have an idea of what would happen immediately thereafter?
Well, it's difficult to speculate as to if they'll go after these sites and what the repercussions would be. I think everybody is doing their very, very best to ensure that the military option is not exercised. But I frankly think that this country, along with the Western allies, need to send a much stronger message to the mullahs and Ahmadinejad that we are serious. The military option is one that if we need to exercise, we will. But in the meantime, there are so many other things that we could be doing to tell Iran we're serious, and that is recognizing, as we've done throughout the Arab world, legitimate Democrat opposition. There's a group called the MEK that we've put on the terrorist list that is a group of Iranian Democrats presently sheltered right now in Iraq, who we promised to protect, and we keep them when we took their weapons away from them, and for whatever reason we have them on the terrorist list. They are pro-American and pro-non-nuclear, very much committed to an open, tolerant society in Iran, and we're considering them as terrorists. So as we consider the nuclear option, there are other things that we need to do, and one is to recognize legitimate democratic opposition either in Iran or now some of them are outside of Iran. We haven't done that. It's amazing.
What about Iran's direct threat to the U.S. homeland, sir? I mean, does Iran have sleeper agents here?
Well, I think we would be foolish if we concluded that given the openness of our society and the ability of people to move in and out, that they don't have, if not sympathizers, they do have agents. I mean, let's see, just a couple of months ago, they had our FBI uncovered plots for the Iranians to assassinate a Saudi ambassador here in the United States. So if it seems to me that the FBI thought they had the capability to do that, and we'd be foolish to think otherwise. We'd be foolish to think that a country that has supported terrorism around the world, Hamas, Hezbollah, that is responsible for the assassination of the president of Lebanon, that is responsible for killing Americans in Afghanistan and Iraq, and the list is endless. We'd be foolish to think that we can negotiate our way through with them and that everything will be fine in a year or two. We must send a strong message about the potential use of military, but we must do what we've done in other countries around the Arab world, recognize those committed to democracy. And for whatever reason, this administration has failed to recognize the MEK movement, or did they fail to recognize the movements in 2009 and 11? And it seems to me that that's one of the strongest messages we could send to Iran. We're serious about our credibility. We're serious about the military option. If we have to use it, we will. But for the time being, let's continue to keep all the options on the table, continue to negotiate. But I don't think we ought to be too hopeful about negotiations.
Given what you've learned at this conference and the discussions you have, given the fact that you're the former Director of Homeland Security, Secretary of that, do you sleep well at night? I mean, and I don't mean this in any sort of, flippant way. I mean, do you worry about the potential of what may be coming down the road?
Well, I used to be asked that question from time to time when I was privileged to serve my country as Secretary, and I used to tell people that I slept well. I didn't sleep often. And the fact of the matter is that in this country we have thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of men and women every day trying to make us more secure, keep us safe, protect this extraordinary existence that we have in this country. But what we don't have right now, in my judgment, is a strong enough message to the mullahs, a strong enough message to Iran, that not only the United States but the Western world is prepared to support the use of a military option. We don't have a strong enough message to say we recognize those democratic groups within your country, Iran, and we recognize the democratic group called the MEK, who we, for whatever reason, have on a terrorist list, and when in fact we don't even have the Taliban on the list. There's a lot of pro-democrat people out there in Iran and the diaspora around the world. We need to recognize them like we recognize the forces that have been very responsible for changing government in the Arab world over the past year.
Our former Secretary...
There was a Persian Spring, and we ignored it. It's about time we got back to supporting democracy in Iran.
All right, former Secretary of Homeland Security Tom Ridge, thanks for making your way from that conference. We appreciate it.
Nice talking with you, Alex. Thank you for the opportunity.
It is time now.